You're a weak one, Mr. Pence. You're a pandering, phony jerk. You're as sincere as an adder. You're a sorry piece of work, Mr. Pence. You're a grubby little lapdog with a little punk smirk. You're a two-face, Mr. Pence. Your conscience is an empty hole. You've a backbone made of jello. You're a sorry little troll, Mr. Pence. Of all the traitors under the Donald, you were the number one mole. You're a lowlife, Mr. Pence. You've the loyalty of a snake. You're a measly little milquetoast and a spineless little fake, Mr. Pence. Given a choice between the two of you, I'd take a poisonous snake. You're a rotter, Mr. Pence. You're a two-faced little punk. Your conscience is an attic filled with piles of useless junk, Mr. Pence. The three words that best describe your campaign are as follows, and I quote, sink, sank, sunk. You disgust me, Mr. Pence. You really are a disgrace. You have a forked tongue and you talk out both sides of your little face, Mr. Pence. Your credibility is an appalling junk heap overflowing with the most disgusting pile of garbage piled halfway to space. You're a foul one, Mr. Pence. You're a whimpering little swine. Indiana doesn't want you and you have a spindly spine, Mr. Pence. You're a three-decker moose nugget and bearscat sandwich, and you certainly are no Weinstein.
Welcome back to the Bruce Walden Show, the show that dares to ask the question, can we just be honest? Was the singer being mean to little Mikey there? You're a mean one, Mr. Pence. First off, we still have a right to the freedom of speech, and we have a right to free press. We do not, however, have a right to an audience. So, if you agree with what we say here on this show, and what we're trying to do here, please subscribe. Without the subscriptions, which cost you nothing, we make very little progress, if any. So share, like, and subscribe. Get your friends to subscribe. Even if they hate my guts, get them to subscribe. That's what helps us to keep on pushing. We hope to go to a live podcast soon, and soon thereafter to grow into a streaming channel. On that channel, we will feature music. To that end, stay around to the end of this video. You won't regret it, I promise. We're going to have talk shows, comedy skit shows, kind of like Almost Live. You remember that show from Seattle? Or SNL, back when SNL was actually funny, if it ever was. I think there was a time that it was. We're working on a sitcom set in Anchorage back in the 80s, and it's called Anchored. And we're kind of kicking around the characters and stuff. We kind of have a lot of that worked out. But we want to do that. And we want to harken back to the heyday when Anchorage was still a good town. I remember those days, do you? Pray much and subscribe, like, and share. As I've said, this show is about what I think. I make no apologies, but I hope to get other opinion pieces and such in here soon. In fact, I want to begin interviewing people who I wish to run for local and state, or who wish, rather, to run for local and state office. I hope that I will want them to. I sure ain't going to push them or support them if I don't. But people that are interested in local government or state government, whatever, We want to be able to feature you here. And I don't mean you moneyed people out there, all the people with a Sullivan somewhere in their name or any of that kind of business. I'm talking about the people that run the local gift shop, the people that have a really big, strong brain, but they don't have the right name or they don't have the money. The times they are a-changing, folks. The times are changing. We may interview those in office to see what kind of excuse they come up with for their non-action. So dig it. Mr. Pence, I'm ashamed of you. I'm ashamed that you're from my home state. Now, Alaska is my home. I was born in Indiana. I'm part of the Hoosier diaspora, as I've said many times. But I'm an Alaskan now, and happily so I don't have to claim you. You are a foul one, Mr. Pence, no doubt. So in a few days, I'll be going on hiatus. So the next show you see will be our 247th American birthday blog on the 4th of July. I will be spending a couple of weeks vacation con mi hermosa querida Catherine, mi angelita preciosa, mi esposa de la futura, with the lovely Catherine. So I thought this might be a good time to update us on the issues that we began looking at just 3 short months ago and see where we stand. I want to talk about false info being put out and the outright deception. Now here we are at the end of Gamble. And you can see, look at this mess. Look at this. This is now a suburb. This isn't even a homeless camp. This is a suburb. Look at here. RVs. Tents. I bet you there's at least 100 tents or RVs or whatever. Cars, people living in. There's a caravan. I guess it's a Dodge Caravan. No, it's some kind of Chevy. Been sitting there for days. What say you, Mayor? City Council? It's not getting smaller. This isn't improving. It's not getting smaller. It's getting bigger. Bigger and bigger and bigger. Now they've got their own dumpster. They've accommodated them with a couple of toilets. They got a place to wash their hands. You know, that's cool. Nothing like having some good clean bums. But look here. There's somebody's garbage just dumped out on the ground. And there's somebody's shopping cart, they stole. That probably belongs to... You know, this used to be the grounds where on the native hospital sat. And this was going to be the turn where the highway-to-highway system would go subsurface right here, and it would be an underpass right through Anchorage. And now, look at here, they got these, they're just bums. They're not homeless, they're bums. Shame, shame, Anchorage. Mr. Mayor, City Council, you're to blame for this. None of you are innocent. Don't say, well, it's the Supreme Court's fault. It's the governor's fault. It's your fault. It's all of your fault. It's all of the above's fault because we allowed it. Palmer, Wasilla, Kenai, Soldotna, all of you, you aren't immune. It's coming to you very soon and has begun already. I told you the other day about a guy that I saw at the post office that had the sign that said, anything will help, God bless you. Saw him there the other day, standing in the same place. And I gave him a piece of my mind. And he said, no, this is my first day here. You're a liar, sir. I'm the one that spoke to you a couple of years ago. And just this very day, I saw him walking down the side or down the bike path with his little sign under his arm. City folks, Palmer, you're not innocent either. City Council, Mayor, what are we going to do about this? We pay taxes here. I pay way more than my share of taxes. What are we going to do about this? It's time for you people in government to stop passing the buck. And if I just lost every one of you as a friend, so be it. You know I'm telling you the truth. We have an election coming up in November right here in the Matsu. There are 3 seats that are up that is assembly seats. I want to declare, I would like for those people to come up and talk to me. I don't even know who they are. I went looking for their names today, couldn't find them. That's only 4 months away. Well, 5. I want to clarify a thing, by the way. I said a couple of months ago that when I was running for governor, I didn't get any real radio coverage. That's not completely true. KSRM in Kenai, Mr. Bird down there, he does the used to do what was called the bird's eye view. and I think he's calling it something else now. I don't get it that often. When I get 9:20 a.m. when I'm leaving Anchorage, and then as soon as I hit the mountains, I lose it. Rick Whitbeck, he gave me a very fair shake. Tom Anderson, who told me straight out, he said, just so you know, he said, full disclosure, I'm a Dunleavy guy. But he gave me respect, and he gave me a very fair shake, and he talked to me, and it was a good interview. I had a good time there. He's a good man. We're told that Biden will no longer sit still for this anti-Asian hatred. It dawned on me what he meant. Let me interpret. This is what Biden is saying to you. What I do in cohorts with the Chinese will be things you cannot stand, but you'll be afraid to say anything for fear of looking like a bigot. You people in local and state government, you had better not play into this, because we're watching you, and we will hold you to account. I promise. I promise. To that end, I intend to organize, and hopefully, along with a friend and brother in the cause, Corinthians Wiley, an organization that we're calling Alaskans Indivisible. Folks, I want every race, every native nation and tribe in the state that can possibly make it out. All my Asian friends, my Hmong friends, my black, white, Hispanic friends, all of you, I want you to be part of this. Remember what Sun Tzu said, you divide and conquer. That's a millennia old type of warfare. You divide the enemy and then you conquer him. Well, the other side of that coin is if you unite, you win. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. Come on now, people, let's get on the ball and work together. We were saying that 50 years ago. That's about 1973, 50 years ago. We still haven't gotten it together. We did for a while, and then Obama divided us. I wrote this book. Were You Warned? Let's see when I wrote this book. This is during the Obama administration. The copyright date is 2013. So 10 years ago I wrote that book. There's a chapter in there called the Obamunist Manifesto, and I'm going to go over that. Not today. Probably not my next blog, which will be in July, but I'm going to go through that tick by tick, boom, 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 right down the item. And I went into the Communist Manifesto. If you've never read it, it's very short. It won't take you long because apparently the people that wrote it weren't that bright. They thought they were. They had cool German names, so they sounded like they were smart. But everything that they talked about doesn't work. So how bright could they be? But the bottom line, I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to show you point by point what the Communist Manifesto says, what Obama did, and what's being shoved down your throat this very day. Before we go into any of that, though, however, let's just continue on here. And I will be reading some of this, but I'm going to do a lot of talking right from the heart today because it's going to be a couple of weeks before I get to talk to you again. Human trafficking blog is coming very soon. I will be talking to Sarah Vance this coming week. She is the one person in the House that I know of for sure is actually trying to do something about this. Whether any of the rest are or not, I don't know, but I know she's heading that up. So I'm going to be talking to her. I will be talking to some others. I'll be meeting with those in the know. There are a bunch of them besides Sarah that aren't in government. We'll be talking to them. This isn't something I'm going to let go. Those people go nameless for the time being. One of them, though, however, one of the people I'll be talking to told us a story. I believe it's at a Fred Meyer somewhere in the local area, somewhere in South Central. Might have been here in the Matsu. Not sure. But she gives a class on how to spot traffickers. And there's an old gentleman sitting, I might have mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. And this guy saw a van pull up. Somebody pulls up next to it. The driver gets out and walks away. The guy in the other car gets out and gets in the van. He's in there for a few minutes, gets out, drives away. The old man gets back in. A few minutes later, same thing. Car pulls up, driver gets out, walks away. Guy gets out of his car, gets in the van. He's in there for a few minutes. He gets in his car, drives away. Driver gets back in. There's an old gentleman sitting there watching this who had taken that class. And he said, this looks like trafficking. He called the police. They come zipping in there. There was a 9-year-old girl in that van being trafficked, being pimped out. Shame on you, Alaska. I'm talking about you people in government. I'm talking about you people in the court system that are allowing this to happen. You ain't innocent. None of you are innocent. You know this is going on. You know, I was going to play the recording that I did with the governor himself. I was going to play that part, and I will soon, just not today. It's getting kind of late at night, and I got other stuff to do. But I'm going to play that part that I recorded with his voice and my voice talking about this very thing. Folks, you've been lied to so much. The illegals right now that are in this country, since the last time I talked to you about this, I believe it was in March we talked about it. And then I was saying 1.2 million had come in since the beginning of the fiscal year. And now there's an additional about 600,000 at the very least. Trust me, there's probably many more, but 600,000 more that they'll admit to since that time. April, May, June. So it's about 200,000 a month. So that's 1.8 million illegal aliens have come in since the start of the fiscal year. And again, likely it's many more. These people pass with impunity. I've got a lot of friends. There's a friend, I'm not going to name him. He's a Hispanic fellow, and I won't tell you what country he's from. He went through all the roadblocks. He got all the way, got his citizenship. He's a proud American citizen. And he's as angry as I am because he's saying, you know what, my family went through hell to get where we are. And look at these clowns just walking in with impunity. And folks, they're not all Hispanic folks. A lot of Chinese, a lot of Arabs, a lot of terrorists coming in over that border. Now, I said this the other day, I'll say it again. If you look at the number of Chinese that have just strolled across that border, my guess is, and this is an educated guess, there are between 50,000 and 100,000 special operators from the Chinese army that are in this country right now. One of these days I'll go into a lot of detail, but you see it's now coming out in the news. They're saying things that I've been saying for years. I know of government workers, and they're paid by folks like you and me who do nonsensical, stupid things on the job, spend whole days of the time that you pay them to be there doing the job. They're wasting your money. And we send billions to Ukraine, and we're paying through the nose and taking every break, paying through the nose, taking every break I could possibly come up with. I still wound up owing over $5,000 in taxes this year. Meanwhile, your government employees are taking the day off and going out and doing stupid things that I won't go into right now, but one day I will. You think that don't just tick me off just a little bit? After all I've done, trying to get all the breaks I could get and doing it very legally, I still wound up owing $5,000 from last year. I'm not okay with that, are you? Are you in a similar situation? We have a grooming system. A communist indoctrination system. I meant an education system. We're no longer 50th. We're around 34th. Did Alaska get better? No, the nation got that much worse. We're not getting any better. We're not improving up here. It's the nation has fallen away that fast. Now, I've talked about this before, turning a weakness into a strength. We could do that with our school system up here. You think about all the garbage that's in these schools, the filth that's on our library shelves. Someone approved that, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody in government, somebody in the school administration, they say, oh, we didn't know it was there. You're lying. They're lying to you again, and you're falling for it again. Folks, you're going to have to wake up at some point, and you've got to start demanding better. And I don't mean when I go to a school board meeting in Anchorage and there's 5 or 6 of us in there, and there's 50 of the other people. We're going to have to start showing up in numbers, not being violent or anything like that, but they need to understand we're not rolling over anymore. We pay their salary. They work for us. Here's something that was brought out here the other day when it's talking about the deal with President Trump and how they're going after him. The people in the FBI, the people in the Justice Department, the people in all these things, they answer to elected government, which means they answer to me and you. That's how this country works. I used to have soldiers, they'd get mad because the civilians run in the military. I said, you know what? You may be right, but you better vote them out because that's the way it works in this country. You have an elected president who appoints the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Army, or whatever you're under. That's the way it's supposed to work. Someone in government, however, thinks that treating our kids to drag shows is a pretty groovy deal. To that end, I went to such an event today. Now, churches all over the Matsu knew this was coming. They all knew this was going to happen today. I want you to take a look at our turnout. And you see some of the strange people that showed up today. Here's one of our side. You might not guess it at first glance. And today is the 10th of June, and we're in front of Black Birch bookstore where they're having a drag queen story hour for the little kiddies. And here cut a whole bunch of troublemakers out here. Hey, how's it going, Mike? Mike and Mike. This is Mike and Mike. And D. Drag is not for kids. Good, good, good. These people have got it. They got it figured out. Don't hide your faces, man.
These show it off, and when they take out the signs.
Yep. But don't hide your face.
That's not helping.
Hey, Mike, show us what you got, buddy.
Yeah, look at these cool people here. Parents bringing their kids to this garbage. I don't think we had actual drag queens. I think these are just very strange lesbians or something. I don't know.
See that tree? Said the lion. I looked around. You mean the little one here? No, said the lion. The big one on that faraway hill. I'll meet you there in 5 minutes. Sounds like a really long pee.
Look at the devil horns on this cool guy.
It took me an hour. You need to hit the gym, said the lion. Step 6 was pouncing.
That chick looks sort of like an old army buddy of mine.
You get a running start and then you jump on that lady. But I'll scare her to death. That's the idea, said the lion. So I got a running start. And I pounced. What a cute little kitty cat, said the lady. Are you lost?
You all knew this was going to be here today. This put up churches and civic meetings all over the place. And there's probably 20 of us. Probably 20 of us. And about 150 of these folks out back. You knew. You've surrendered.
And here's some more of the really stellar individuals that showed up for this little show today.
Now, I was very put off by the absence of my Christian brothers and sisters, but then I remembered Gideon and his army. And God was sending him up against, was it the Midianites? I cannot remember. I'm embarrassed that I'm not remembering it right off. But he was sending them up against an enemy. And he said, Gideon, you got too many people. I can't be glorified. Your army's too big. So you take them down there to that stream, and every guy that slaps the water into his mouth and just laps it up like a dog, set him aside. I may be getting this story backwards, but you'll get the idea. And God looked at that army and said, yep, too many people still yet. So now you take them back down to the river, and everybody that is looking around being careful, set him aside. And then God looked at what was left there, and he said, now you got the right number. He only had like 300 dudes, and he was going up against an army, I believe, of 10,000. And he whooped the snot out of them. You know why? Because God turned the enemy sword, one guy's fighting against his fellow. And God said, now I can get glory out of this. So when we go to these things and our fellow Christians don't show up, yeah, that looks bad on us as Christians. But God will get the glory if we're faithful. I heard a story about a guy who he was sitting at home. He's a Christian. Here's a knock on the door. He opens the door, and a guy, he's a Satanist or a witch or whatever, and he invited him to his service. And the guy said, well, I won't come over there. I'm a Christian. And the guy said, then why am I knocking on your door? In other words, why didn't you come to me? You saw the folks a while ago. You saw the lady that walked down. I didn't catch that. I meant to. In fact, I feel I'm under conviction right now because I think God told me to go down there and sit down in the grass with those folks and practice what I preach and tell them, like, look, like Nixon said, we can't hear each other if we're screaming. So we're going to sit down and talk and explain to them that Jesus died on a cross for their sin. And if they were the only people in the world in the history of man that would have ever accepted him, he would have still hung there and died for them. Now, the Navy has a little drag punk as an ambassador. He's the drag ambassador. I saw where either the Air Force or the Army post had canceled a drag performance at the last minute. That post commander, I think, pretended not to know. Sir or ma'am, you should be relieved of command. You're a joke. Back to the trans foolishness. Guys, you give up your penis in the name of wokeness. Women being crammed full of testosterone. You get a woman that goes off the deep end because she gets a lifetime supply of testosterone. All of a sudden, she don't know what to do with it. We talked about that the other day. You ever notice that when a guy says, I want to transition, he always transitions to a woman? I've never seen one say, I want to transition to one of these other genders that we've dreamed up. I saw something very encouraging, just I believe it was yesterday. And you know, when you go into it, like you open up another tab on your computer and it has a whole bunch of news stories. Well, one of them, I'm starting to see them. They're starting to say, people are starting to realize that it's a big lie about Donald Trump, that he never did all the stuff that they try to make it. We'll get into that in a minute. But one of the things that popped up said Gen Z is starting to accept the fact that if they were born with a ding dong, they're a man. If they're born without one, they're a girl. And if you're born a girl, you're going to grow up to be a woman. If you're born a man, you're going to grow up to be a man. I mean, if you're born a boy, you're going to grow up to be a man. How about this training film by the Navy? They put this out, I think it was last year. I'm going to stop here and show you this video, just as much of it as I can stomach. I might not be able to see the whole thing without gagging.
Hi, my name is Johnny and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I'm Conchi and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
What is a pronoun? A pronoun is how we identify ourselves apart from our name, and it's also how people refer to us in conversations.
Using the right pronouns is a really simple way to affirm someone's identity. It is a signal of acceptance and respect.
If it's a signal of acceptance and respect, how do we go about creating a safe space for everybody?
That's a good question. A really good way to do that is to use inclusive language. Instead of saying something like, hey guys, you can say, hey everyone, or hey team.
Yeah, and now that you say that, another way that we could show that we're allies and that we accept everybody is to maybe include our pronouns in our emails, or like we just did, introduce ourselves using our pronouns.
But what would I do if I misgender someone?
I think the first thing to recognize is that it's not the end of the world. You correct yourself and move on, or you accept the correction and move on. The most important thing I can tell you is do not put the burden of making you feel good about your mistake on the person that you just misgendered.
Oh, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, and another tip for you to remember their pronoun next time, it's in your mind. Kind of go through a progression of 3 good things about the person using their pronoun. So let's say the person chooses to use they, then you will in your mind go, they have a nice shirt.
Couldn't you just puke? What do you think about it, Big Dan? Yup. Just jiving with you there, homeboy. Love you, man. There's a general wussification in our country. Kind of goes along with that stolen valor gig. Here's the thing, folks, and I don't hesitate to get into this, but I know that some of my segues here are kind of sloppy. Thing is, like I said, I'm speaking to you from the heart. And I'm talking to you about things that we've talked about. I'm just kind of doing an update today. I hope you'll find it at least entertaining, if not informative. I actually spent most of my career in Special Forces. Now, I don't care what you did. If you served honorably, man, I love you and I respect you. We used to have a cook, and his name was PFC Carr. If you see this, get in touch with me, buddy. And this guy, when he's in the civilian clothes, he had rings through every part of his body, I guess. But he was the most professional, one of the most professional soldiers I ever met. Because when we rolled out of bed at 0 dark 30, when we were in the field up here in Hatcher Pass, some of you remember that. That was a big lie that was told to you there also. I can prove it. Well, I can explain it, and I think you'll agree. But Carr would be up, it was way below 0. And he'd be in the mess tent, and he'd have chow on when we got up in the morning. He never missed. That's a professional. Say, well, spoon. Yeah, what would you do without them spoons, huh? Anyway, so there I was. I spent my career doing my SF thing and all that, and it was groovy. When someone tells you, I can't tell you what I did because it was too high speed, I'll explain to you why that is. It's called, they are lying to you. I don't care if it's daddy. I don't care if it's your big brother, your uncle. When they tell you, I can't tell you what I did, it's because I didn't do anything. I'll spot a liar every time. Again, I'm an intel guy. I can spot a lie. And if you lie, I don't have to get you to admit it, and I don't have to be able to prove it if I know you're lying to me. One guy told me a while back, I was somewhere where I wasn't back during Vietnam, although he never went to Vietnam. You're lying, Slick. I can't tell you who I worked for. I was a contractor, but I can't tell you who I worked for. You're lying. Now, it is true. If you work for certain, like 3 initial organizations, if you're contracted to them, probably don't want to talk about that. When I worked as a contractor, I worked for the embassy, so that's no biggie. But you can tell what contracting agency you work for. They won't tell you because they know that a guy like me will instantly get in touch with that outfit and find out their lie. That's the way it works. I was on my job one day. A guy comes in and told me he was a Navy SEAL. I said, really? And I got in touch with a friend of mine who I worked with as a contractor. And I know this guy was mentioned in the book No Easy Day because he said something to me that really identified him as that person. So I got in contact with him. I said, hey, Seth, you ever heard of this guy? And he said, give me 5 minutes. And he called me back, or he texted me back, and he said, there was a guy with that last name. There were 2 of them that went through the BUDS course. That's the SEAL qualification course, if you will. And neither one of them had this first name. And there was one that went through the old Frogman course back in the days, and he didn't have that name. And this guy was too young anyway. And the guy said that again. And I said, no, you weren't. You weren't a SEAL. Well, I'll bring in my DD-214. I said, I can scan a DD-214 into my computer and lie out all I want to. That's easy. My stuff's on a microfiche. I can prove everything I did. I can't make a microfiche. I had another guy came in, and he mentioned that he had been to Fort Leonard Wood, and I said, were you a MP or were you a engineer? And he said, oh, I was Delta Force. I said, really? They got you in Delta Force right out of basic? And he said, yep. And I said, no, they didn't. I said, here's the problem. Both these guys, I said, here's the thing. You come around the corner here, you look at me, first time you've ever seen me, and you assume that I was born 1 second before you walked around that corner. You have no idea what I've done with my life, and you have no idea how easy it is for me to check your backstory. You're a liar, sir. You're lying to me. You have those people, well, my records all burned up in that fire in St. Louis in 1973 at the records branch. No, they didn't. If you look into that, all the records that they burned in 73, but the records that burned were records for soldiers that served between, I think, 1904, or was it 1914, and 1964, I believe. It was the early 60s. Might have been 1912 to 1964. That was the vast majority, like 82% of those that burned, they were Army. The other part was made up for by Navy folks that had served during that same time. There were a handful of, I think, Marine and Air Force from that same period, I believe, and they were in a locker because they'd been pulled aside to look through the records, happened to be in that area when it burned. So that's just, I hate to hurt anybody's feelings, but the bottom line is, even Daddy or your big brother tells you I was a Marine Recon or Navy SEAL or Green Beret Ranger Sapper Sniper Agent Orange CIA Special Killer Dude, but my records burned. Yeah, sorry, they're lying. Now, going back into the weird stuff, 1 Corinthians 6:9 says, Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. In other words, men abusing themselves with other men. Folks, as you saw in that film earlier, there was a couple, you didn't see that. I don't think I recorded the part, but there's a couple sitting there like, we don't believe in God, we're pagans. Okay. You're walking towards a cliff, and I say, there's a cliff in front of you, and they say, well, I don't believe in cliffs. And you walk off the cliff, what do you suppose is going to happen to you? It don't matter whether you believe in God or not. He's still there. Here's something now. We're getting away from that a little bit, but going back to the military. And I wrote in the book, the Kings of the East. I talked about a thing that in that book was they called this the U.S. Military Preparatory School or something to that effect. And I was gratified here this past week. And there's a Marine. He's a retired Marine, and he just like reacts to things. I'm sure you've seen him. He's got a beard. Always wears a baseball cap. And he was reviewing a thing the Army's got. It's called the Future Soldier Preparatory Course. And they take people that are overweight and they get them ready to serve in the military. You say, well, that's stupid. They should be, you know what? That's easy to say. We can't make mission. And we've got a lot of fat people out there that would love to join, but they can't because they're overweight. But they have it here. When I went through Triple Canopy, we had a kid, we called him Pee Wee, but he's this big old dude. He's a big old fat boy. I mean, not wallowing fat, but he's pretty chubby for the kind of stuff that we did. And I saw that guy. He would run. He did it was like a couple of miles, a mile and a half. So it wasn't that long, because this is geared towards retirees. But this kid wasn't retired, and he puked all over himself and just kept right on running. And he was embarrassed. And I said, Pee Wee, if I had a platoon of guys with your heart, I'd take any objective you want. So you might think about that. The best and the fittest, they're staying away in droves. They don't want any part of this military. This military is a joke. It's a woke joke. And we're losing. We're losing right now. Now, something else to think about. I wrote a book, and now this one isn't in print. This one is, obviously. But this last book that I wrote, it's the biggest one. It's about 1,000 pages, and there are actually 3 books in that book. And it starts in like about now. And it runs all the way out to July 4th, 2026. I'm sorry, 2076. But in the same book, there's an enemy, and they come over from Quebec. Amazing about that. And by this point in this book, Quebec is its own country. And these guys, a bunch of them come into the U.S., and they have these boxes that have little rockets in them, small rockets. And these rockets will fire up into the sky, and then they deploy parachutes, and they flutter down, go like they're carried about by the wind. And when they get to the ground, they explode, and they throw magnesium and white phosphorus, and they set forest fires. Now they come in, they set these boxes up, cover them up, camouflage them, and they sneak back in later and put cell phones on them so they can just dial them and make them all fire at once. Those fires in Quebec that are smoking New York City in the Northeast, if you look at the satellite video of those fires it's fast forwarding, they all started at the same moment. That's not coincidence, folks. Now, I think this was a test run, but those of you who know the history of World War II, you ever hear of the Triple Nickel? It was an all-black paratrooper outfit that stayed in the United States and fought fires because the Japanese were sending over these firebombs under balloons. And President Roosevelt told the news media, I want this kept quiet. I don't want people to know about it. And there was only one family that died as a result because one of the bombs didn't go off. They were on a picnic in Oregon, and one of the kids went and whacked that thing with a rock or something, and it blew up and killed him. These fires that are going on all over the place are meant to overwhelm our resources. Remember when I showed you the fire tower? I used to work in that fire tower. I was in the National Guard at the time. Now, I wasn't a firefighter in the National Guard. I was a cannon cocker. But when I wasn't doing my National Guard thing, I worked for the Forestry Service. So soon we'll go into that a little bit more. But I know whereof I speak in that regard. I wrote that into that book because the way I write those books is, what would I do if I was the enemy? What would I do to this country? And almost every time proves out. Very soon, like I said, we're going to talk about human trafficking in all its vile forms. I've showed you the book that I wrote entitled Angels in Chains. It's not just sex trafficking. There's a lot of stuff. I think of the slaves in China, the slaves that the Chinese own in Africa. Don't fool yourself. They own them. And here, for that matter, we've got Chinese slaves right here in this country. Don't be fooled. They go out there and they in Africa and in China, they go out there and they dig the rare earth metals and stuff like that and all the cobalt and all that groovy stuff. They do it with their hands. Even Elon Musk looked at this stuff and said, look, the electric car, it really ain't working that well. So we're going to try something else. And he went to something that he had poo-pooed in the past. He's going to hydrogen cells for cars. He was not originally a proponent of it, but he has changed his mind. And it doesn't take slave labor. And hydrogen is the most abundant resource on Earth, and the groovy byproduct of it is water vapor. It might get too cloudy sometimes, but other than that, that's it. Now, here a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the roads that are needed here. I won't belabor that because we've talked about it recently. But I will say this. Here I sit, still yet in Palmer. That one city block of road that they built all last summer is still closed. Still not painted. You catching on what's going on, folks? You see how you've been lied to at every level of government. You look at what's happening to Donald Trump. He's been indicted yet again. And I'm kind of glad this time, and I'll tell you why. You see, he's the greatest threat to these people on the left. It is almost fortunate, actually, because even the people that are on the far left are looking at this and yeah, something ain't ringing true here. And it just so happened that happened at the same time, roughly, that the FBI had to fork over the evidence on the Biden scandal. You see how it works? Look at this shiny little thing over here. Don't notice what I'm doing over here. That's an old magician's trick. And when you look at Donald Trump, and I love the guy, like I said, I'd take a bullet for him. Never think he's the only guy that can save this nation, because, look, we have 333 million folks here. And if there's only one potential leader, we're in a world of hurt. What if he fell dead before Election Day? He's the guy I'm going to support with every fiber of my being. But you've got to remember, he's only going to be there for 4 years. We'd better be looking for whoever's going to replace him. Right now, honestly, I think I won't say he's the only guy that can do the job, but he's the only guy I can think of, and he's the only guy I plan to endorse and push for and work for. Now, this whole thing's going to blow up in the Democrats' faces, and when it does, I'm going to laugh my best, man. I was gratified to see a new study that says that Gen X or Gen Z is awakening to all this stuff. These days, men think that the more feminine they act and the more they talk like a well baby, the more action they're going to get. But the cool thing is the women are starting to say, I don't want anything to do with this milksop. I hear adults using words like button, like this button on my microphone. Or I heard a bunch of reporters. I heard this on OAN. I love OAN. But they need to have some diction classes for the reporters when they talk about an important issue. What are you, 4 years old? Important? I know I'm being an old pain in the neck. I don't care. Talk to me like an adult. Folks, we're going to have to start taking our local elections a lot more seriously, too. Because like I said the other day, nobody appeared in high office like that. Everybody started somewhere, with the exception of Donald Trump. Everybody started as some local, Joe Blow out here or Josephine Blow out here, and they worked their way up. I hope that a lot of you that are out here wanting to look for public office, I hope you'll swallow your pride and let me help you. People are paying attention. People are paying attention to this blog. Trust me when I tell you. And those of you who, if I sit down and I talk to you, I'll know if you're being sincere. I know how to find out. I know how to look you in the eye and see your expression and read you. And if I think you're being insincere, I'm going to call you out. Our history's being destroyed here in Anchorage. Look what they did to 4th Avenue Theater, by the Chinese, by the way. Throughout Alaska, right across the country. Wow, the free world, but right across the country. And we sit by and we allow it. Fort Bragg is now Fort Liberty. No, it's Fort Bragg. Enough's enough. Braxton Bragg was a Union officer, and later he is a Confederate officer. Well, he's a U.S. officer. Then he became a Confederate general. I don't care. I don't care. If I saw a picture of him, I wouldn't know who he is. From what I understand, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the chandelier. I understand that when he was in the Union Army, he was I think he was a procurement officer, and he would put forward a procurement form, or whatever it was called back in those days, But he was also the guy that said yay or nay on those procurements. And then he had switched to that role, and he'd shoot his own request down, and he did that 8 times. Wasn't the smartest guy in the world. I don't care which army he was in. I don't care about him. What I care about is Fort Bragg is the home of the Airborne, and it's the home of the Special Operations Command, or Special Forces Command. That's my home. That's where I grew up. That's where I was born as a Green Beret. But we've turned our history upside down. Right's wrong and wrong's right. You see everything being redone by the left in hopes that someone will stand up and say, too much, so that they can call you a racist, for instance. What's next? Roots? Released with all roles reversed? Kunta Kinte is now an Irishman captured by folks in Senegambia? Is that what's coming next? Let me fill you in on a little thing that I wrote 5 years ago. And this is reposted by my good friend Sybil Angelica Castro Curry, and this is her words about what I wrote. She said, Bruce Walden, who ran for borough mayor and governor of Alaska, great words. Now, this is what I wrote. It's from June 10th. Wow, how trippy. Exactly 5 years ago today. It says, racism in our time, how about it, folks? Now, I'm reading here, so bear with me. This is a little bit long. Yesterday, I marched in the Colony Days Parade in Palmer. Yeah, we just had it again today. I guess it's always on June 10th. Who knows? As a candidate for borough mayor, I noticed some really angry scowls from the folks in the audience and a lot of friendly folks as well. The anger I can understand. The people have gotten so used to being lied to by their government that they trust nobody, and can you blame them? When we elected the current Congress to repeal Obamacare and so many other things and nothing happened, we elected Donald Trump to fix things. And his Congress, and this Congress, rather, has fought him tooth and nail all the way. Sad. We send folks to Juneau to stop Walker from ripping us off, and when they get there, they come down with Lynn Canal fever, and we can't get enough cooperation out of them to get much done either. And here in the Mat-Su, don't get me started. The thing that stuck out to me in yesterday's parade was the fact that the LGBT crowd, and that's what they were calling it in 2018. They didn't add all that other junk on yet. They turned out probably more than anyone else. And that in the Mat-Su. Something isn't jiving here. Yes, I said jibing, not jiving. Look it up. If you sail, you get it. It's a nautical term. I'm all for people's right to free speech. I fought for it. I had dear friends who rendered up the full measure of devotion for it. But what I don't get are the signs they are carrying that read, end racism now. People wake up. Racism? What racism? Racism was all but dead and buried until Obama resurrected it and pounded that drum for 8 years. And many of you are still falling for that foolishness. And most of you do not even recall when there was real evil racism in this country. I do. I remember a time when a black kid could not use the same John as a white kid. Now, that did not happen at our school, as there was only one black family with kids that attended there, and Oscar was considered a friend to all of us, and we stood by him. Boy, we stood by him, and we protected him. He had a little sister, but she's in another grade. I remember joining the Army in the late 70s and eating, sleeping, and soldiering with troops of all races. I remember my bunkmate was a guy named George Campbell, and we became best buddies. And we didn't consider race to be an issue, even less so here in Alaska. The real truth is that, by and large, race had become a non-issue to most of us in this country until January 20th, 2009. Then a president came in and goofed it all up. Morgan Freeman said it best, if we stop talking about racism, it'll go away. It is much like the old quote attributed to a native elder. Inside me, there are two wolves fighting each other. One is good and one is evil. The one that wins is the one I feed. Racism is much like some evil spirit from a bad movie that disappears until people start talking about him or her and entertaining him or her, and bam, there he is. Are you a racist? No. Then you don't have to prove it. Just let it go. When they tell you, if you're not a racist, prove it by doing this or that. Tell them, go fly a kite. I know I'm not a racist and feel no compulsion to prove it. My life should show it. Next, if you are a racist, then you deny God because he created mankind in his image. Not some men, not men of some race, but all men and women. So if you call your neighbor a, fill in the blank with your inappropriate racial slur of your choice, you're calling God the same. In fact, you're calling yourself the same, because you are saying God makes mistakes. And if he created mankind in his image, then it goes for all of us. Think before you speak. Folks, I love everybody. The Bible tells us we're supposed to love everybody. And like I've said before, I imagine every race that there is represented in my family, and I love them. My fiance is Hispanic. My daughter-in-law is Asian. I've got grandsons that are half Mexican, and I love them all. We've got to get past this. I would not want to live in a nation where everybody looked like me. Wouldn't that be a snore and a yawn? I don't want to live that way. So going back, I was in a meeting recently, and they talked about just about everything you can imagine, except for the one really good thing that came out of this last Congress, and that's the gold and silver being pushed for Alaskan legal currency. It's 100% legal and 100% constitutional. How do you keep that gold foil from crumbling? Now, this is interesting. I looked at a video, or looked into video it, and I believe it was Utah that they have, maybe it was Nevada. Anyway, they have like $100 gold certificate, dollar bill, whatever, and it's covered, it's sandwiched between a polymer, so it's not going to crumble, and even if it happens to crack, it's not going anywhere. So that's where it comes from. I think that's cool. Thanks, Kevin McCabe. Now, say, Bruce, Kevin McCabe isn't that conservative. You know what? He did something right. I could walk through the House and the Senate and point out a lot of people that aren't conservative, and that'd be 95% of them at least. I was watching a clip from the Hannity show, and I think I saw Mayor Bronson on there. Mayor, if that was you, you've got issues right here at home. If that was you, knock off the junkets and fix Anchorage. And we're, again, just like you, just like the governor, everybody up the chain. We're tired of the excuses. We don't want to hear that it's the council's fault anymore. If they aren't doing their jobs, start stumping for better. You people on the council, we're coming for your jobs. I promise you. Well, I'm going to find, if I have to do it myself, to walk through Anchorage to find people to run against every one of you until we've replaced you all, because you've all failed. And people that use the City Council of Anchorage for a stepping stone to the House or the Senate, we're coming after you too. We're coming after your job. We're not blind. We're not stupid out here. Again, to all you people in government, from the lowliest appointed office to the White House, we're sick and tired, downright fighting mad about the excuses. So knock it off and get to doing your jobs. I could grab a bunch of privates, you people in Anchorage. I could grab a couple of privates and say, here, your right and left limits. We want a fix for the homeless situation, and I want it in 48 hours. I'm going to be back at noon 2 days from today, and I want your fix. And they'd have it. Maybe that's the problem, Colonel Bronson. When you people, we have the homeless folks out there, and there are those, like I've said, that are, a lot of them are victims of fetal alcohol syndrome because their mother wouldn't stop drinking. I was seeing a guy today, and he's standing there screaming at the wind. I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at his mom. Or I'm mad at the guy that raped her when she was 13 that drove her into alcoholism. I'm real mad at that guy. I'd like to see him hanging. But you people, well, I can't work. You know what? I used to work at a place, and we had an outfit that cleaned it, and they were called assets. And assets were all special needs folks. Some of them were mentally, they had mental issues, and some of them had physical issues. And I had a friend there named Chris. He worked for him, and he was totally good to go. But his back was in such bad shape, he had to lean on the trash can that he filled. But you know something? He never missed work. I see some of these people that are so mentally handicapped they can't even speak. But they never miss work. What's your excuse, you people out there? So, as I told you, I asked you to hang around to the end of the video. And now, for those of you who know me, you know that music is very important to me. It's part of my life. I was never cut out to be a singing star. That's not my thing. I always like mousing around behind the scenes. When it comes to movies and videos and stuff, I would love to mouse around behind the scenes. I don't want to be a star out there. That's not my gig. But when I was a soldier, I didn't drink or party. I still don't. So when my buds would go out partying, and we'd be all over the world, go to some exotic places. When they went out drinking and running crazy and doing that kind of stuff, I would go out and check out the local music scene. And I found that A, there's a world of music outside the U.S., B, our music industry in the U.S. is very snobbish, snotty, and regardless of how talented folks are, if they aren't fill in your blank with your favorite artist, they're not going to be heard. And also that C, most of the folks that are huge stars in their countries are very personable as anyone you might wish to meet. In 1993, when I was an ROTC instructor, the Iron Curtain had just come down, and Nashville Now featured a bluegrass band from Russia. The name of the band was Kukuruza, which in Russian means corn. They're not to be confused with rock band. The band was headed by a lovely red-haired lady by the name of Irina Surina. We've become great friends. She's become a very dear and trusted friend. She's also a woman of great faith. When my son Jake was suffering from non-NMDA receptor encephalitis, it was very rare and very dread disease. I had people all over the place. I had friends praying for him. And I got in touch with Irina. And many in her circle of friends got in on this too. There were people all across Russia, all across Australia, all across these United States and Canada that are friends of mine because of the people I know in the music field, all praying for him. And praise be to God, he was miraculously healed. Now, God used a doctor in this case, but I'm happy to report that Jakey's 100%. And Irina is still out there knocking them dead. As Alaska is very proud of its Russian heritage, I asked her if I could feature her music, and she very graciously agreed. I think she has the most perfect voice in music today. Never mind if you don't speak or understand Russian, listen to the music. Here are two awesome songs by Irina and company, one from a few years ago and one more recent. Ladies and gentlemen, dami и господа, моя очень хорошая друга Ирина Surina.
Порушка бараня, ты за что любишь Ивана? Ой, да я за то люблю Ивана, что головушка кудрява, а бородушка да кучерява, кудри вьются вдоль лица. Люблю Ваню молодца, кудри вьются вдоль лица. Ой, люблю Ваню молодца, ой, ну уж как Ванюшка по горенке похаживает. Бараня, ты за что любишь Ивана? Ой, да я за то люблю Ивана, что головушка кудрява, а бородушка да кучерява, кудри вьются вдоль лица. Люблю Ваню молодца, ой, кудри вьются вдоль лица. Ой, люблю Ваню молодца, ой, ну уж как Ванюшка по горенке похаживает. каким ты был, таким остался орел степной, казак лихой. Зачем ты снова повстречался? Зачем нарушил мой покой? Зачем опять в своих утраках меня хотел ты обвинить? В одном я только виновата, что нету сил тебя забыть. В одном я только виновата, что нету сил тебя забыть. Свою судьбу с твоей судьбою пускай связать я не смогла, но я жила одним тобою. Я всю войну тебя ждала, когда наступят сроки, когда вернешься ты домой. И горьки твои упреки, горячий мой, упрямый мой. И горьки твои упреки, горячий мой, упрямый мой. Соло! Юрий Медяник! Твоя печаль, твоя тревога, твоя обида ни к чему. Смотри, душа моя открыта, тебе открыта одному. Но ты взглянуть не догадался, умчался вдаль казак лихой. Каким ты был, таким ты и остался, но ты дорог мне такой. Каким ты был, таким ты и остался, но ты и дорог мне такой.
And folks, that's our show for June, the last show for June. I'll see you again on the 4th of July. May God bless you. May He bless America. May He bless this state. Like, share, subscribe. Folks, we can't do it if you don't help us. Love you all, and God bless. Good night.